Okay, we're live, and let's see, we have Janet Carlin and a few other people for the meeting.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our regular April City Council meeting. I'm Linda Ratchford, City Council President, and joining me are our council members, Suzanne Souter, Russell Smith, Michael Platt, Valerie Leary. Also, we have our mayor, Mike Carana, and our city treasurer, Janet Carlin. And we have our city administrator, Bill Barthel, our city solicitor, Dan Lasco, our chief of police, Richard McCabe, our building official, Jeff Bergstrom, and also joining us this evening is Pam Patone, who's the MSC general manager. This is going to be my last regular monthly council meeting as city council president. And my congratulations go to the newly elected city council president, Michael Platt, who will assuming his duties soon, in addition to re-elected council member Russell Smith and newly elected councilperson Joe Day. Along with Mayor Mike Caranta and council members Valerie Leary and Suzanne Souter, the city has a very strong leadership team. It's truly been my honor and privilege to be your public service these 7+ years. And I want to thank the city staff, city administrator, and all the staff members, including the police chief and also our building official, made my job so much easier. And I can tell you, they work 7 days a week watching out for you. And we're just so fortunate to have city workers who really care so much about our city, its residents, its businesses. And we're also fortunate to have so many volunteers on our boards and commissions who give generously of their time and expertise. So as usual, we have a full agenda, so let's get down to business. The first item on the agenda is a approval of the minutes for March 9, our regular meeting minutes, March 30, public hearing minutes, and March 30, special meeting minutes. Are there any comments?
Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
It's Mike Quaranta. I noticed on the Tuesday, March 9 minutes, on the second paragraph where it says approval of the minutes by date, we probably want to get off on the right foot with Councilperson Platt. I believe he's got 2 T's at the end of his last name, not 1.
Okay, any other changes?
Yes, on the same minutes, the March 9th regular meeting on page 5, roughly in the middle of the page under fishing pier, it says the fishing pier and paid parking lot with lights project in the Dobbinsville area is approved. I think maybe they mean it should be paved.
Correct.
Yeah.
Nice catch.
Okay, anything else? Okay, do I have a motion to approve the minutes as amended?
So be it.
Second,
Second.
Okay, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Okay, the minutes have been approved unanimously. Also, let's go to the staff reports, starting with the treasurer's report.
Good evening, everyone. This is the March 31st, 2021 unaudited treasurer's report. The unrestricted funds are $5,770,375.18. Total restricted funds, $448,258.79. Total cash in the accounts, $6,218,633.97.
Are everything as you expect, Ms. Carlin?
Yes, we're right on schedule. If you just check your budget report that you have in your packet, the percentage at the end of the the revenue page indicates that we're 85% of our collected to the budget. However, that has a lot to do with it's higher than it has been at this time in previous years, mostly because there was 62% of the budget was lowered, and that is a reflection of the percentage being higher. Plus, we have gotten more monies in than we anticipated, even after we revisited the budget in October. So we're doing fine at this point.
Any other questions for the treasurer? Okay, do I have a motion to approve the treasurer's report as presented, unaudited?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay, who is the second?
Suzanne.
So Kathy Weirk will know. This is our stenographer, Kathy Weirk, and also our council secretary, Kim Bergmuller, with us this evening. So all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, the treasurer's report has been approved unanimously. Let's go on to reports from the city administrator and staff.
Okay, thank you, Madam President. Just to piggyback on what the treasurer said, I would like to point out at the last council meeting, Ms. Souter asked about some of the overages and their relation, or if they were related to any of the COVID expenses. So I had Kathy Walls went ahead, and if you look at your report, you can see those items where that were affected by COVID have been highlighted in blue. So you can see the majority, as I commented at the last meeting, I believe they were as a result of COVID, and so you can see more specifically on your report. So if there's any questions there, I certainly can answer them, or so could the treasurer, but I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, thank you. And that those figures add up to about $77,000 to this point, and we haven't completed everything as yet, but that's the effect that the CARES has had on our monies.
Okay, and if there are no further questions, then the first thing, Madam President, or the next thing I should say that I'd like to address with council, is Separation Day. We've made the decision, unfortunately, and probably is no surprise to everybody, that we need to cancel the Friday night event and the Saturday event, just because of the continued restrictions that the state has on any event. They've lessened the reins a little bit on it. Anything over 150 people gathering, you have to provide a plan to the state for approval, and we just felt, as the folks did for Dano, Newcastle, and other events around the state, that it would be probably too cumbersome for us to go ahead and proceed, at least with the Friday night event and the day event. But I did ask Julie from Event Allies. We are still trying to salvage the fireworks if we can. Okay, Julie just came into the meeting, and so Julie, I'm just going to ask if you would share with council the work you've been doing and where it stands, and the thoughts you had about trying to resolve this or keep this program. I think you're muted. Kim, she's muted. There you go.
Good evening, guys. Thanks for having me tonight. Yes, we've been doing a lot of work, hoping to be able to hold the Saturday night fireworks. We've met with Bill a couple of times, and we're currently, we actually work with met with the police chief too, and feeling like there's maybe an opportunity to actually move the fireworks to William Penn High School, and to do the fireworks on their property, allowing us to use their parking lot and then potentially some of the parking lots of some of the close by schools. We've talked extensively with Department of Health, the tourism office. We've met with the superintendent over the phone, and now we're working with some of their different facilities folks to try and determine the feasibility of actually doing it over at William Penn. In talking with the fireworks company, one of the things that we've determined is that if we just change the size basically of the firework, folks in downtown historic Newcastle would be able to stay at home and come out to their yard and actually see the fireworks. And then people would be able to drive into William Penn. We'd be able to use their existing parking spots to put the cars. So there would be no festival component. People would be staying basically where they park. It would be a drive-to event. But the fireworks, people would be able to see them in the air for a 2-mile radius from William Penn. And so we are really feeling like this may be a way to continue the tradition of offering this component of the festival to our residents and letting them have a celebratory component of the event. But it's certainly not a done deal. It's something that we're still actively trying to work through with William Penn and Colonial School District. Any questions?
This council.
One thought.
I just wanted to encourage everyone to ask questions and give some feedback as whether is you're comfortable moving forward with this with the right precautions. Go ahead.
One thought is the president has made a statement about trying to make it safe for everybody to have a barbecue in their backyard by July 4th. And I wonder if we could push the event to July 4th. And that gains us a couple, if not a few weeks. Yeah, I'm not pushing for that, but thought maybe that's something you might want to consider.
To changing the date. Thank you. That's definitely
Yeah, just that'll be a few more weeks of shots before we get there.
Mhm.
Councilman Platt here. When you said it's a drive-in event and parking spots, are you just going to use the blacktop area, William Penn, or will there be parking on the grass?
That hasn't been determined yet. We've asked if there would be parking that would be allowed in order to go to the larger size firework. You have to have a 420-foot radius from where the fireworks are being shot off from. Likely that would be in the corner behind the tennis courts is where they would be going from. So we're not certain yet. One of the reasons that we were initially thinking about moving from Battery Park was to keep cars off of, driving into the park. So same sort of thing, depending on the weather and how wet the grass would be, it would be a little bit difficult to be responsible for putting cars on some of their fields.
And if I can just follow up, I'm actually for this. That's actually pretty good. I like thinking outside the box as far as this is going. But what would be the plan for the overflow? Because fireworks, no matter where they're at, they draw a large crowd. I mean, when they're at Battery Park, there's thousands of people. And what happens when William Penn fills up? Are they just going to go into Stockton? Or are they going to go just park on 273? I mean, that been thought out.
Yeah, so there are, as you well know, a couple of schools very close, plus the Little League field. I mean, it does seem as though there would be, we will have a plan of when the first lot is full, then what? Like, where do we move to? The very first step we need is final approval from Colonial that it's okay to move forward there and to also hear your input. But we would certainly have other lots identified where people could go.
Okay. And my last question, you say 2-mile radius. I'm sitting here in Van Dyke. I'll be able to see them from Van Dyke.
That's
They're going to be that high.
Yep, that's the plan.
That's a good plan. No ground then whatsoever.
No.
Okay, that's a great plan. I like that.
When they used to shoot them off at the airport, you could see them we could see them in Wilmington Manor Gardens. I know that. You know, and there's the Baptist Church, which we've used for a
Yep.
decade.
Mhm.
So I'm sure you've looked at that, Julie.
Yeah, so there are typically 4 different lots that we use typically for separation day. And so all of those lots, of course, would be utilized. But yeah, I think changing the size of the firework and them going higher so that more people literally could stay home, go outside and see them from their property in downtown. It's kind of a major game changer, to be honest with you, because hopefully folks from within Newcastle wouldn't feel the need to get in their car and drive to William Penn or to any of the surrounding schools.
Very creative.
Absolutely. And all vendors will be banned?
Correct. No,
Okay.
no vendors.
Very creative. I agree with Mr. Smith.
I think it's a great idea too, but certainly July 4th is a great idea as well. Fully community involvement. Since we can't market it per se as separation day, or I guess you could, but you know, July 4th would be nice. We're always asked if we're having them on July 4th, and you know, we're like, no, we had our Independence Day 2 weeks ago, but you know, in light of everything been going on, that just might be a really good idea. Although we should check to see if anyone else in the area is having them, Wilmington or Newark or anyone.
Yeah.
Madam President,
Yes, Mayor.
thank you. Julie, thanks for joining us and thanks for the presentation. Maybe this is a Mr. Lasko question real quick. Is there any stipulation in the grant that we get from the state? Julie, you might know this too, that would say that the funds have to be used for separation day and that's a specific requirement. Would we have to seek some kind of relief in order to use those funds for funding of that purpose? And I think also the other comment I'd make is, I mean, I like the idea of thinking outside the box. The good news about perhaps moving it to the 4th of July, provided that the vendor is available, because that's of course, for obvious reasons, a busy time for people that do fireworks. Perhaps maybe you lessen the crowd because people do have other options. So that would be just another observation I'd make. So thank you. Any thoughts on the stipulations of the grant money?
I'd have to defer to Bill or Kim. I don't actually write the grant and aid application, but I do know that the grant and aid application is for separation day. So I'm not certain if it is, you know, date specific. Clearly it is about the festival and, you know, activities around the celebration of separation day.
Well, and I'll chime in on that. Okay, it is date specific. Obviously, we state the you know, the Friday night, we've added the Friday night, the barbecue, the things we've done in the past few years, and it is state specific. However, I will say this, and I'm going to kick it back to you, Julie, because from our conversation, first of all, I'm of the belief that the state will be more than enthusiastic if we could put something together that will kind of get people going back to some kind of normalcy. You know, and what we're talking about is involving the school system, children. I mean, we're getting them involved with the community. So I would think they would be more than willing to allow us to do this portion of the event, still calling it Separation Day, whether we do it on the 4th of July or whatever date we do it. But again, I think, Julie, you and I talked about that, and I got the impression that the folks you have spoken to, that was pretty much their, you know, thoughts on it.
Yeah, so we've had a lot of conversations with the state tourism office. And if we moved the date, I'm certain that they would be amenable to that. If we moved it to be 4th of July, that's just slightly different. That's why I asked, you know, kind of was slightly hesitant, because that is you know, the 4th of July is a national holiday. These funds were for Separation Day. So I certainly would be happy to ask that question, make sure that there's, you know, no loophole there that gets us tied up in any way. But the state is working with us in lockstep. As Bill said, they are so appreciative of us thinking about how to make it happen and how to do it in a safe manner. You know, I know if it wasn't on the second week of June, there clearly wouldn't be an issue from the state's perspective if we were to change dates. I'm slightly hesitant to just say, yes, they'd have no problem if we used the funds for 4th of July fireworks. But I'm happy to look into it and just see if there's any caveat to the use of funds for fireworks on another date.
We could certainly, this is Council President Radford, we could certainly celebrate the birthday of Delaware and the birthday of our nation on the same day and say for this year only. Right?
Absolutely.
I think, yeah, but to continue to be creative. I think there's a lot of enthusiasm of trying to get back to normal, and the fireworks are one of the best parts of the separation day and one that could be safe.
Yep.
All right. At this point, you're gonna coordinate with Bill and keep
Yep,
us posted.
I am.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thanks for having me tonight.
Thanks, Julie.
Thanks, Julie.
Thanks, Julie.
Thank you.
Okay, the next thing, Madam President, I'm just going to ask Jeff to give us an update on when we're going to be getting Delaware Street, the pavement completed. Hopefully you've spoken with Cirillo today, Jeff, and you can update us on that.
Looks like about the middle of May.
Oh,
That's when they're gonna start
It will only be a couple days.
to do the whole street?
Yes.
So to mill the street, to sound the street, like what did you call it when they roll
Mill and
over?
Proof roll it. We'll proof roll
Proof roll
part of it.
So to
We'll
mill,
be, yes, we're gonna minimize the disturbance and things are what they are. We're gonna try to get it done sooner than that, but our estimate, his estimate, best estimate was middle of May, so.
So, Ms. Burge, can I ask you about I know they were digging another hole this week in the street. Is there some other work we need to continue underground?
No, that was an emergency sewer repair caused by a contractor error during our utility project.
Okay, thank you.
That's done.
Okay, and just quickly, the Delaware Street traffic light project, we've been in conversation with DelDOT on that, and they're planning right now. They've pushed that back to the fall, and I don't have an exact date on that, other than they're planning on starting that sometime in the fall. I have another meeting with the gentleman from DelDOT on Thursday to hopefully get a better idea, but basically right now that's what they're projecting. So as I get more information, obviously I'll let council know. And if council doesn't have any questions for me, then I'll kick it over to the chief.
Mr. Barthel, this is Council President Radford. I do have a question about electric vehicles. Are you and Ms. Patone going to cover that now?
I was thinking that you wanted that covered when she was talking about the Delaware, about, the trenching, the underground of the utilities.
That would be fine. Okay.
Okay.
Chief?
Chief?
Good evening, thank you. First, I want to apologize. I sent everybody a revised version of the quality of life for March via email. If you didn't get it, I apologize. If you're looking at the one that I sent in the packet, it looked familiar from last month. It was because it was the same one, so I apologize for that. Nothing really striking last month. The numbers have increased a little bit. I think we talked about that last month. As the weather warms, we're going to see some more activity as people get released, but nothing overly alarming. But I did want to touch base on the planned protest that we just experienced, and I wanted to hopefully answer a few questions that I got over the last couple of weeks, and just give a brief synopsis, if that's okay.
Please do.
We received the report early in the week of a planned protest. The 2A groups, the Second Amendment groups had started to advertise on social media that they wanted to meet in Newcastle. We followed up with our state and local intelligence communities and confirmed that the event was planned. We were able to identify one of the organizers, and we met with her downtown for a handful of reasons. One is what we found from other agencies that have experienced this on a much larger level. Most of these groups are well-intended and obviously protected by the First Amendment. When you meet and establish parameters, it usually goes a little bit smoother than if we just kind of wait till the last minute. So she was amenable to our parameters, and, you know, identified the spot where they wanted to be. It was clear that this event was going to take place, and that's not, you know, something that we had any control over, but it helped that we were able to at least establish some rules. As the week progressed, we noticed that, you know, some language that had come out of Washington perhaps provoked another handful of 2A groups, and that maybe we were concerned that this would rise, that the number of attendees would rise. But we were still back and forth all week with it. We also had some I'll say, you know, we were looking at the weather to see whether or not this was going to take place. We had experienced this over the summer, where we had 2 events for Battery Park that were scheduled, planned protests that were eventually canceled due to weather. So once it got late in the week and we recognized that this was probably going to happen, we continued with an operation plan, and I reached out to other agencies. We were very fortunate to get a lot of resources. Our mutual aid agreements came in. We played in a big part in this. And without giving a ton of operational security away, we managed to put together a rather large police presence with multidisciplined groups. And we did this for a handful of reasons. We were confident that the threat assessment on this planned protest was low, but we recognized that there are some criminals that take advantage of opportunities like this to kind of mingle in the crowd and to cause problems. We recognize that this area is close to residential, to homes, to people's where they park, and we recognize that we weren't going to be able to provide a space like some of the major cities have. And then obviously the fact that we recognize the historic significance of the building to preserve the courthouse, the sheriff's house, and the surrounding area. So. And the group, I think, figured out towards the end the historic significance, which we also were concerned may have the numbers grow. So we put a good plan together. We had all the support we needed, and then we executed it. I won't get into any specific details of the plan, but we had a lot of seniority. Senior police officers at the scene that had a lot of experience. I reached out to a handful that one chief I talked to had been through this 30 times already. So we got a lot of background and we got a lot of advice. We waited until the last minute to put this out because, quite frankly, this is not something we're sponsoring. It's not a city sponsored event. This is we wanted this to be as smooth as possible, and we weren't looking to develop crowds. And I think an early notification may have done that. We also, somebody had asked that people wanted to be able to form counter protests. Again, that's not something that we would endorse or try to promote. Our goal was to make this as peaceful as possible. And we had very low level incidents that police had to get involved with, and it was a handful of counter protesters that were told to leave, and they left. So that was one of the questions I got was why the delay in the notification, and that was one of them. The other question I got was the amount of police officer presence. Was it necessary? And I could say that if we didn't have that type of presence and with that many people in that small of an area, if something had gone wrong, anybody that came in to help us would have been rescuing us. They would have been rescuing people and not doing their job, which is to move along. And the last thing I want to address is the permit. Quite frankly, if they were to come without a permit, and this is happening all over the country, they're still exercising a First Amendment right. And there is very specific language on how we disperse that. In order to disperse, I had the language typed and in my op plan. It was the second page behind the initial warning order. So It was all written out, ready to go. Dispersing crowds like that, there needs to be a significant reason to do that. And the minute you do that, and the minute you challenge these groups, you're putting everybody at risk. And the idea was to protect their First Amendment right to gather and to speak, and to protect the city, to protect the courthouse, but to protect them as well. So I think it went smooth. I know there were folks that maybe were upset. We have to determine from our perspective whether or not there's a safety issue. It's never about what the message is. It's about whether or not, we can control this atmosphere, and when it's time to break it down, break it down. I think it went well. The organizer promised that she'd leave the place cleaner than she found it. I think she did a pretty good job at that. So, overall, the threat assessment from the beginning was low, and we're happy to say that there were no significant events.
This is Council President Ratchford. I think you did a great job, and it's so important to be prepared. We have seen situations where the police were not prepared. And it's just fortunate things went so well and we didn't need the backups, but by the time you realize you need them, it's too late. So thank you very much for doing a good job. It was very respectful. It was mainly your officers and close in. And I think that it all went very, very well.
This is Councilman Smith. I'd like to concur. I think you did a fine job. The only feedback I got was some folks felt they should have known what it was about earlier. And I think not doing that was a good idea, as you said, not to make the crowd bigger and to make any opponents target that as an anti-protest. So the folks there got to say their say and had, I think, a smooth incident. And I congratulate you on managing that event very well.
Any other questions about this event? I had one other question myself about other stuff in general.
I just had received a couple questions about how much it was costing the city, which I did reach out to the city administrator to find that the cost of the law enforcement OT on our side was covered by a grant at the state, which all law enforcement agencies have access to. And so the cost of the city was pretty close to nil, unless you include the 2 hours the public service workers had to wrap the courthouse and orange fencing. But other than that, it's to the city, it was nothing.
Okay, thank you. I did have a couple of comments, concerns. This is related to 2 incidents recently where there was substance abuse and cars in the historic district, and they ran into things. And so people were, concerned about drugs in the city. And I would just like you to give your perspective on that.
Right. So I think we're talking about a crash on the Strand and then maybe a crash at 3rd and Delaware.
Correct.
Both caused by drivers under the influence. I know it's hard to imagine that a car on its side wasn't caused by speed, but if our overall assessment was that was a combination of being under the influence and distracted driving. The 3rd Street crash was somebody going the wrong way, again, under the influence. I think I said earlier in some of our earlier discussions that our numbers that show substance abuse in general have pretty much stayed the same or even gone lower. And we think that, and we're talking to other nonprofit groups and other agencies that are working with a Narcan initiative. We think that some of that comes from the initiative to push the Narcan. We're not getting the reports that we would typically get that people are overdosing. And as a matter of fact, we just signed up to start another initiative where it's called a Leave Behind, where our officers are now going to not only carry the Narcan, they're going to carry extra Narcan, and they're going to be trained to train. So when we go to an overdose, we'll treat if it's already been treated, We're going to train the family in the use of Narcan, and then we'll leave it behind. And then as part of this initiative, there'll be some follow-up where we go back to the home a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks later to check on people to see how they're doing. If there's a Hero Help initiative as part of that, we'll follow up with the Hero Help to see if there was an offender that can go the treatment route as opposed to the criminal justice route. We'll check on that. I don't typically like to respond to some of the comments, but I did see a comment that said that there's a concern that how this driver got to where they got. And, we welcome criticism. I mean, we're not perfect, and we know that. And I've been publicly, I've publicly said that over the last year, our productivity and our proactiveness has slowed quite a bit because of the pandemic, because of civil unrest. And I want to address that issue because there's a couple of concerns to that. First, we're assuming that there was erratic driving throughout, and you just can't do that. I mean, you just can't make that assumption. The second is, obviously we can't be everywhere at all times. So I don't think, unless we have evidence that we watched him drive the wrong way down the road and ignored it, I don't think that was a fair statement. But I get it, and I know I've said this publicly that I've witnessed traffic violations myself and say, where are the cops when you need them? So I get it, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I had a departmental meeting with our officers today because there's a lot going on in the world of law enforcement again. And there's a lot of tension, there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of concern. We're still in the middle of a pandemic, but we are going to see some increase because we recognize, and this was discussed today, that a lot of this is quality of life stuff that's affecting residents, and we know, and we've publicly stated that many of the incidents that we're dealing with as people come through are non-residents cutting through the city, and we recognize that can be frustrating, and we are doing what we can, but we're going to miss a lot, and I know that because there's thousands and thousands and thousands of cars coming through a day. And there's 2, maybe 3 of us. So we're going to do the best we can. But as far as the other issue I want to talk about with the drug use, we are seeing a number of our DUIs increased to 9 this month. They're going to increase anyway with the level of production. But with pending legislation that's going to legalize marijuana, we're going to see an issue. And we're actually addressing it from a budget standpoint because for us to prosecute that, we need to draw blood. To draw blood, it costs money. So, and that's another reason why we have a drug recognition expert. And I think I addressed that in our annual report. We have one of the few officers in the state that's trained to recognize drug use to prosecute impairment. So we're trying to put all the tools in place to address this issue, but we're faced with a significant problem, and I'll end with an exaggerated analogy, but it's the best way to describe this. Half the people want to defund us and strip us of our authority and limit what we can and can't do, and the other half want us to solve all their problems, and we're in the middle. And we're standing in a lake of gasoline, and every time somebody says something that is makes a comment about our ability or our talents, or we do something that's not right, we're lighting a match. And as long as this continues, you're going to see a gridlock. Our guys do not sometimes know what to do. And as videos surface of contacts that we're having out in the public, you're seeing things that show hesitation, show fear, and bad things are happening. So there's a lot going on. We're not immune to it, but it is having an effect on the overall ability to police. So, I felt compelled to share that. And I hope when people speak, especially folks that have a desire to serve, your words matter. And, this is a very volatile time. So we are not perfect, and we're going to continue to try to get better. But we're doing the best we can. So I appreciate you giving me the moment there, and I hope I at least tried to answer your question.
Well, I can say that the city and this council and mayor and staff are very supportive of our view the chief and our staffing. And when these things come up to me, I tell people, I say, drugs are everywhere. We're around 3 highways and people sometimes get lost here. That's my explanation. And we realize it is a very tough job. It's a tough job to get people, to recruit people. It's a tough job to keep people here. And you have a lot of responsibilities and you deal with a lot of issues, and just know that you have our support as a community and our support as leaders for you. So thank you so much.
Thank you. We appreciate that.
In regard to that first comment, I saw that comment and that you should have instantly been on that person as soon as they started speeding through the city. It was a totally unreasonable comment and really doesn't even deserve to be addressed.
Okay, thank you. Anything else, Chief?
No, ma'am.
Okay, Ms. Barthel, anything else?
Just one thing, Madam President, and more on a personal note. First of all, thank you for your earlier comments. I very much appreciate it. I know the staff appreciates it, but I just want to say we've been working together for 7.5 years, which is a long time. And I just want to say it's been a privilege and an honor, and thank you for your leadership, Linda. It's been great.
You're welcome. It's truly, we always say this is a special place and it's special people that make it that way. So we're all very fortunate. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're gonna go to council communications.
Me again, Councilman Smith, and I hope Kim is ready. I'd like to introduce the new flag of the city of Newcastle. Clap, 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 clap. All right, we're there, and I'd like to officially unveil that at the installation of the new officers. I think that's on the 20th now, and try to get Newcastle a little publicity out of that. Thank you.
Thank you for doing all the work and the signs that are going up around the city too.
Where can I
thank
buy
you.
one?
Where do you buy one? Though individually they're pretty expensive, and you know that, Valerie. I'm hoping that Mike Connolly or NCCP will buy some little ones, either to give out or to sell. So we'll see what we can do.
Councilperson Leary here. I too would like to say thank you to Linda, Council President Ratchford. 7.5 years ago, we attended your swearing in, and we were all doing happy dances. So you have taken a lot of flack unnecessarily, and you have handled it with diplomacy and grace.
Thank you. That's very, I really appreciate that.
And I think your shoes, I don't think, I know, your shoes are going to be nearly impossible to fill. So thank you so much.
Please tell Mike what drugs you use. Keep you so steady and on target.
I think that's one of the joys, knowing that, and leaving, because then it was, I feel of citizen rule, and I felt 7.5 years was a good term. And I think that, one of the things I feel really good about is the leadership that we'll be carrying forward. And so I thank you because I enjoyed working with all of you. And I also thank you for continuing to work for the city.
Madam President, I'd like to jump in and thank you also. It's been a pleasure to work with you over the last 4 years. And if you change your phone number, make sure I get a copy of it. I'm calling you for advice. Thanks again.
Anytime. Anyone else?
Yes, thank you very much, Linda, for everything. I think that the difficult times and you've had, but and you're the only one that can put a finger on the rewards that you've reaped. But I think you've done a wonderful job. Thank you very much.
And thank you for your service. You've helped us keep financially stable for many years. You're going to continue. Yes, you are now an appointed treasurer. So thank you.
Yes, thank you for making that happen.
And Suzanne Stouter, I just need to add my thanks. And also I've come to realize how much work you do behind the scenes to make things move smoothly during the meetings. And I appreciate that. So thank you.
You're very welcome.
Yep.
At this point, we'll ask if there's no more comments from council, the mayor to speak.
Well, good evening, everybody. And let me start off with a note of thanks for Linda for all the years of service and friendship that preceded all that with you and your husband, Mike, of course, your son, Ted, who was an intern of mine way back in the day. Linda's a proud mother of two and has raised a couple of great kids. Her list of accomplishments has been detailed more recently in the paper. While nothing gets done in life typically on your own, you do need somebody to help kind of drive the process. And so under her stewardship, we've made a lot of good change, a lot of good progress. I look forward to thinking big and doing great things in the future. But there's another reason, Bill, that we can perhaps, if we end up moving to the 4th of July, the little girl from Fort Worth, Texas, was born on the 4th of July. She's a proud LSU Tiger, and that would be a fun way to send you off if we end up with our fireworks on the 4th of July. But Linda, let me personally thank you. There were a lot of bumps in the road. There always are. This is a thankless task, as everybody who does serve knows, whether it's in a staff capacity or an elected capacity. Many great highs with accomplishments, some challenges also, at a time when Mike had some real health issues. So through it all, appreciate all your time, dedication, and I wish you the very best of health and good luck, whatever comes next. So thank you very much.
Thank you for those words.
Let me also thank all the candidates that were on the ballot on Saturday. It's a privilege to put your name out there and run, and it's of course a great honor to be selected. And so my congratulations to the winners. I look forward to working with them as we go forward. I think there was a airing of some issues, some of our services, our buildings. And I think we'll look at all of that and more, and try to guide the city in smart and strategic ways that benefit all the residents in the most thoughtful way we possibly can. I also want to take this moment to thank all the members of the Board of Elections. Theirs is a tough task. They also, for many, did this cycle without the benefit of Mary Ann, who steps aside some time ago. So they'll get better, but they did a great job, and we appreciate their service as well. I have a couple of vacancies, one which we'll dispense with tonight, and that is now with the election of Joe Day to the City Council, though it creates two vacancies. We'll have one on the Board of Health, which we will hopefully fill tonight. Let me say that I've been in touch with Jackie Metz, Jackie, who served on the Board of Health, and her term literally expired just a couple of days ago. She's agreed to step in and serve. I have been informed by Mr. Dave, he's tendered his resignation from the Board of Health and also from the Planning Commission. So I would encourage you tonight to act favorably upon Ms. Metz's reappointment to the Board of Health. She's served with distinction. I believe she was a school nurse and for most of her career, and a good contributor. I have a couple of ideas which I'll share once I figure out the next step on the planning commission, and I'll share that, and hopefully we'll have an opportunity to fill that vacancy at the May meeting. Let me also, while we're on kind of vacancies and personnel issues, let me also congratulate Pam Petone. Pam has announced that she's going to Easter Seals, and that's a high calling. If you've not had a chance to visit the good folks at Easter Seals, I would encourage you to do so. Very mission driven, wonderful place. They do just terrific things for people. Pam has served with distinction for a number of years, sort of like my relationship with Linda, sort of like my relationship with Bill and everybody on this council. There have been some high points and there have been a couple of low points, but I've never doubted her desire to do a good job and serve the people as best as she possibly can. So Pam, let me thank you and wish you the very best. And as you move on to Easter Seals, so good luck to you.
Thank you very much, Mayor.
Let me also talk about the ongoing conversations that are moving along with Delmarva MSC and the utilities as we undertake additional road work activity in the city, and the potential of putting utilities underground. That work continues apace, and perhaps there will be more to share as the evening goes on or at future meetings. But I think that we're all interested in trying to do the best. These are once in a lifetime opportunities, and so I'm continuing to work as others are who I'm looking at on the screen to see if we can take those what have been dreams and make them realities. Let me also mention, and I think I did share this with a couple of you, and I shared it with the Tree Commission in the paper. Delmarva has, I think for the 10th time, announced that they're working with the Arbor Day Foundation to give away 1,000 trees for the asking for residential use. So if people are interested in trees, I'm not sure what the species are, I'm not sure what the exact details are, but if people are interested and they contact Delmarva, the information I shared with the Tree Commission and the paper should have sufficient information to that residents can take advantage of. Be a great thing to plant more trees. Obviously, we want to be very mindful of the species, but it's a wonderful program, and I thank the good folks at Delmarva for their efforts. It's also a privilege, a lot of personnel, different things to announce. My friend and a friend of the city of Newcastle, Katie McCormick. If you recall, Katie lived in Newcastle for many years. I lived over on Plum Alley. Katie was my appointee to the Ethics Commission back when we had an entity like that. She's an incredible lawyer. And a couple years ago, she was appointed to the Court of Chancery. Of course, the Delaware Court of Chancery is the court for business cases. It's very important. It's one of the reasons why Delaware stands out across the country, and in fact, the world, is a place where people incorporate. And she's now been asked by the governor on Friday to be the new leader as Chancellor Bouchard has announced his retirement. Katie has been nominated to be the next Chancellor of Chancery Court. That is a high honor and privilege, and stands apart in the court systems in the United States. And so for those of us that know her, we tip our hat to her. I will conclude with this. I would just hope that as we move forward, we have some real opportunities. Think big and do big things. That will require some change. Change is disruptive. It's never comfortable. It's never elegant. But we have an opportunity to do some things that are strategic and smart. We've done a lot of things around our community, like most communities, for decades the same way. It doesn't mean that those are bad things. That perhaps we, upon real thorough review, maybe we keep it just as is, because maybe it just makes a lot of sense. But I think we owe it to ourselves and the 5,500 people that call this place home And for the thousands of business people that work here every day that come from someplace else, but do spend their time and talent and treasure in the city as employers, I think we really owe it to everybody to kind of turn over every stone and really kind of look at everything we do and do that regularly. We may end up right back where we are, and that's perfectly fine, and that's a good thing, but we owe it to everybody to kind of be thoughtful, smart, strategic. And I would just encourage us as we move forward to think big and be considerate of every option that seems to make sense to us. So with that, Madam President, for the last time I'll say that, Madam President, congratulations again, and thank you for your service. I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I have just a few things. We love the events in Newcastle, and unfortunately, we've been very limited in which ones we can have. But this weekend there is a Battery Park cleanup sponsored by the Newcastle Sailing Club. Also, AirSAFA is going to do their May market on May 7th and 8th, just right before Mother's Day. So that's another great event to support. And I just want to remind people that you still have an opportunity to give comments to Will Mapco as the city moves forward in developing a transportation plan with consultant and with DelDOT. And these efforts are ongoing. All this information is on the city website. So thank you. At this point, I'm going to ask for public comments, and I do ask if you would keep it to raise your hands and keep it to 3 minutes. I'm going to ask Mr. Smith to time and help for Mr. Mueller for someone that has their hands up.
All right, I have Mr. Gross.
Okay, Mr. Gross.
Good evening, Madam President. I guess it's sort of repetitive to my comments a month ago, but I can't say it enough. Even though we've had our disagreements and butting heads, I guess reflecting back, I've got to say, you know what? You did a darn good job. And I'm proud that you were in your position and you were able to keep the tide even and no major calamities or anything that happened. You seem to have a good calming effect. So my hat's off to you and I thank you very much. And hopefully we'll continue to see you around in your usual smiling self.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate that.
Thank you. And second of all, thank you to the chief. I guess after the description of what you had to deal with and the planning that went behind the demonstration, which we as the public don't get the opportunity to see. I thank you for doing your diligence and connecting with the other authorities and people to make something that could have been a major calamity. As Councilman Smith said, I guess everything worked well and we avoided a potential disaster. So again, I thank you. In regards to the fireworks, I'm all for it. I mean, moving it to William Penn allows our communities overall to have the advantage to view it from their own areas, which is a great change. And I actually would love to see it continue there. As far as changing the date, July 4th, I think that would just kind of be a slap in our face because we've had the pride that we made Separation Day happen. That's our celebration and ours alone. And myself managing a band, I know the drive-in way of doing it as we did on the riverfront is phenomenal. It's just great. So again, that's just my thought. And thank you everyone for doing your job. And let's wait and see what happens to the next crew that's coming in. And Pam, by the way, you're a gem. You're a real gem to our community, to what you do. And I can't thank you enough either. I applaud you. So good luck in what you do. Easter Seals is phenomenal. And Good luck to you. Thank
Thank
you
you
all.
very much.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Gross. Anyone else? Okay, we're going to move on then to council discussion on underground utilities. And we're fortunate to have Ms. Fatone here and also Mr. Barthel. And we're going to turn it to you first, Ms. Fatone, if you could give us an update on what you found out since we had our last meeting.
Absolutely.
I'm
Since the
sorry,
last,
can I interrupt for 1 second? We do have another hand that went up right as you were going over. It's Dave Baldini.
Okay, Mr. Baldini, excuse me, Pam, we'll come back to you. Mr. Baldini?
His
You're
mic's not
muted,
on.
Dave.
He's still muted.
You're muted, David.
No.
There you go.
Sorry about that. It's not David's fault, it's mine. I would love to just say ditto for all the thank yous to everybody, particularly Linda. I'm gonna miss you. But I know that we have 2 years before we have to worry about this. I'd like to just bring this thought process up, and I am going to do some research on it. And that is the issue of the campaign signs. Having talked to a lot of people and having seen that signs were still across the street from me until this afternoon, and felt that there were an awful lot of signs. I have also checked into a few other cities, small cities, as far as their election rule or their campaign rules. And I'm thinking that it was way too much. I think a comment was made was it really does make the city look tacky. And I do get comments from people that drive down, that ride their bikes down along South Street. And one person thought that it must be some heck of an election that we're having. But just as a matter of thought, in the future, if there could be some more regulatory rules and restrictions, not that we want to restrict anybody's campaign, but littering the town doesn't make it, it doesn't help. It doesn't help for anybody. And I don't think that it's a good look for us. And I think that we as a city can certainly do a better job of helping the candidates present their signs and their, you know, their platform and everything else without littering the city. Maybe even as far as restrictions, maybe a month is too long, maybe just certain areas, maybe certain numbers. To have 10 of one sign within 3 feet of each other, 10 of the same sign, that's a little much. And I don't think it even bodes well for the candidate. So that's just a thought.
Okay, thank you. That was Judy Baldini. Appreciate your comments. And there are some rules and they are published and given to the candidates. And I guess the suggestion is that they be revisited in advance of the next election. So thank you for your comments. Anyone else, Ms. Bergmuller?
No, that's it.
Okay, thank you. We're going to go back to Ms. Fatone.
Okay. So since the last meeting, both Scott Blomquist and myself have met with Utility Engineers, which is the group that we had already contracted with to do a system-wide design of the underground electric. And they were able to push the Delmarva gas plan, the year 2 to 5 plan, to the front of their work. And they have given basically a cost estimate for the electric for the entire project of the Delmarva Gas. And then what we did with that was that we added what we estimated high level, of course, for Verizon and Comcast to also go down. And that's just based on using some estimates that were, accumulated from the Delaware Street project. And then from there, we broke it down into the next 4 years, because from the design of the electric, we can't do exactly the same phasing or years that Delmarva Gas is. We tried to mirror it as much as possible, but there's some background, what we call backbone, that needs to be developed and installed before we can just be going down each street. So from that, we tried to break down the total cost into those sections. So what we just developed, and I still have a little bit of work to do, and also wanted to get an idea from council, some of their further questions. But what we developed was, if we did the backbone in year 1, in addition to the Strand and the first block of Harmony, we would have a total number of high level, approximately $10.2 million. Year 2 would include the 2nd Street, 2nd block of Harmony, and Plum Alley. And Bill, I apologize, I haven't even had this information to share with you yet because it's still fairly new. And that would be about $7.2 million. Year 3 would be 3rd Street and 3rd block of Harmony at $9.8 million. And then the 4th year, which is the year that Delmarva would be finished, their project, we would have to combine 4th Street and 4th block of Harmony. And then we would also throw in 4th to 6th Street, which is actually not on Delmarva Gas's project. But we need it in there in order to have everything come together and be able to be energized. So we had to add in a little bit, not only the backbone I was talking about, but this last section at about $11.8 million. So the total roughly is about $39.2 million. If you did, the next 4 years, those 4 phases, and obviously contracting it out, with the contractor to do the work. Now, what that would do to electric rates, I have not been able to. I have reached out to our rate consultant, asked him if he could develop the model to make sure we could throw these numbers in and see what that would do for electric rates. And I have sent him the information this afternoon, so I hope to get that information back. But that's kind of where we're at right now as far as accumulating information so that you have some numbers to think about. And that does not include any paving. I do need to add that in there. And then, of course, there are a lot of assumptions with this project. There's some assumptions that we would have some synergies, as we've been talking about with Delmarva Gas, and trying to secure some savings on that. I did talk to utility engineers and asked them if they would be open to possibly presenting some information to council at a future meeting, if you were interested in hearing, some of the thoughts about the challenges and that kind of thing, and how you need to build the system out. And of course, Scott Blomquist could always be invited as well if you'd like to hear from an operational perspective. He has, obviously it is the commission and the council's desire and the comprehensive plan to go underground. He has some thoughts about, having his crews do the work, because then they know where things are, and that he feels that you get a better quality, but you do have it drawn out for a very long period of time. And now's the opportunity to possibly outsource it and have it done faster. So I welcome the request of whether you'd like to have them visit a meeting and do a presentation. Any questions?
And Councilman Platt here, does that include the other utilities like Verizon and Comcast?
So yes, so the total amount that we've estimated right now for just electric is about 15.3 million. Verizon at about 14 million and Comcast at about 9.8. And that's where you get the 39 million.
Okay, so then that means there'll be no more telephone poles in downtown at all.
Well, that is something that, yes, would need to be discussed, and obviously, yes, that is the
That's just the
expectation.
goal.
That
Right.
is the goal. We did want to remind everybody that there was a third attacher to poles recently. Fiber Tech, I believe, was their name, and, you know, there'd have to be a plan developed for, you know, future groups that may want to come into the city. But yes, that is the plan.
Okay.
Thank you.
Madam
Mr.
President,
Tow, go ahead, Mayor.
Pam, thank you for that. And that'll take some time to kind of digest, and I
Sure.
understand you just got these, but so of the $15 million that MSC estimates is their portion for electric, does that mean that MSC would be in a position to cover that expense or some portion of it?
So the commissioners have not seen this at all, first of
Okay.
all. Second of all, we have, you know, I just got it to our rate consultants. So, you know, the way that the MSC would have to pay for it would be to adjust rates. And so the commissioners would have to see this information and digest it and see what that does to the rates, and whether that's something that, you know, the commission would be willing to do.
Great. And the last thing is with some of the infrastructure money that's coming to the state, the stimulus money that's coming to the state, you know, there are some options there. I know that gets directed to the city, but I don't know if you have any reactions or thoughts about that in terms of permissibility and or flexibility.
Well, I understood that Bill was working on trying to identify some funds for this project through that. And I guess, you know, initially I wasn't sure whether that was going to be to help the Verizon and Comcast cost, or if it was going to be to, you know, cover the project as whole. I will say that there are quite a bit of water projects that we, you know, believe that, you know, could potentially fall under that funding. And we were also hoping to, you know, have a discussion with Bill and council, if appropriate, to submit for funding for water projects as well. So, you know, I think that that's all part of a comprehensive discussion that needs to take place, maybe, and to see. So I'm not sure if I answered your question, but certainly would want to explore that funding option.
No problem. I just one last quick comment, and then I'll be done. But I just wanted to just share with everybody, having connections and conversations with Verizon. You know, it's their posture that it really it doesn't matter to them for their business model. They get asked this all the time in communities around the country, whether they're above ground or below ground. And for their business model, it really doesn't matter. So they're not going to be particularly willing to cover their share. I will say Comcast, though, is in a different posture. They do prefer to be below ground, and they have a history of being a bit more, I want to use the word cooperative, and it's not that Verizon is uncooperative. It's just that, it really is less important to their business model whether their towers are above ground or their services are below ground. So thank you. I'll be done.
And there's this infrastructure bill maybe coming along, and maybe there's a bit of help there. I'm a visual learner, so if we could see this on paper, it would be a lot easier to digest.
I think that's fair. And
Madam President, if I may jump in here, Pam, excuse me, if I can jump in, it's just so everybody's on the same page, because the mayor referred to it and Mr. Smith is referring to it. And I believe, Mr. Smith, you're referring to the American Rescue Plan Act.
No.
Then what are you referring to?
Well, wait a minute. With the one that's already passed, I think is what Mike was referring to.
The $2.75 million that is potentially slated for the city. That number has been identified. It hasn't been solidified yet. We're waiting for that. And as far as what those funds can actually be used for, we still don't know specifically. And I'm hoping that we will have something from the state in the next couple of weeks. And that's what I believe that's what Mike was talking about. The
Right, no, I'm
2.75
talking
million.
about the bill under discussion right now. The
The
infrastructure bill.
infrastructure bill. Okay, the next bill coming that hasn't passed.
Yeah, I mean, that's a, I mean, yeah, this is Mike Quaranta. So, Councilman, I guess I would just say this. Yeah, I mean, there's I was on a call today with a number of different organizations that are actively involved in trying to manage through that discussion in Washington, and it's complicated, and we can see how that unfolds. It is a bipartisan priority. There are questions about how you're going to pay for it, and then what the actual uses can be. That's still very controversial. Not going to bore everybody here. Some people care about roads. Some people care about in rural areas more. Some people about rail and urban transit, as you can imagine. So it's kind of an urban-rural thing. So it's complicated. What we do know is, though, in the Rescue Act, yes, we are entitled to some amount of money, but that's still, we have to sort out, what the parameters are about that. But we're a long way on having agreement on on a major infrastructure bill in this
Oh,
country.
right. I
Correct.
wouldn't spend that just now.
Yeah.
We don't, it's nowhere near being passed.
Right, that's correct.
And there's possibility, sometimes there's community transportation funds that other cities have used. So and there's also rate structures that could be looked at. There's even some more creative ones. And I think really to make decisions, you have to have a better understanding of the plan, of the potential, structures, and whether you create districts or whether it's rolled into the electric rates and some other way of funding. And how you manage that. So I think there are a lot of questions. I do have one specific question. That's regarding what is the backbone when you refer to the backbone?
So the backbone area has to do with Chestnut Street. And basically, in order to connect to all the other electric infrastructure, the design and the engineers recommended that needed to get done first. It's in essence, all of Chestnut Street needs to be done, and then we're able to connect. There was part of the challenge as we were talking this through and working with them is, you're building, the analogy was building a house, and you need to build the foundation first, which is partly that backbone, and that you really don't get to live in the house until it's all done. So the idea was, initially the discussion was, we wouldn't be able to break it down. We'd have to do all phases before we could energize. And I kind of rejected that idea because we wanted to be able to break it down. And if you weren't able to if you did the backbone and did the strand, but then you didn't have the funding to do year 2, 3, 4, and 5, we wanted to make sure that we could still energize and remove poles as we went along. And that's kind of where the backbone came in, to make sure that we start off with the backbone, get the Chestnut Street done, so that then we can do each street individually and, finish it, energize it. Not to say that all the work would necessarily be done, but at least the mechanics were there and in place. There's a lot of technical stuff that I would welcome Scott and the engineer to come in and talk about with everybody and give a touch of it, because of the underground. There are transformers up on the poles. There's a lot of equipment up on that poles. When you get rid of that equipment, you need a lot of space underneath the ground, and the manholes and things of that nature to get in there, and you need switch gears, and so that's what they're working on, is that design for us. So as Russ mentioned, a picture is worth 1,000 words. So it may be good to have them provide us, and we don't have pictures just yet. We really asked for that high level number thing, so we could put dollars in front of you initially to see where people were falling in. But I could certainly go back and see when I could get some kind of picture drawing high level conversation from them to come to council, if that would be your request.
It sounds to me like there's a lot of interest in that topic. I will leave, Mr. Platt and the rest of council to carry forward. But it sounds like people would like to hear more about what are the components. I think it's something that there's a high interest level.
I will certainly, first of all, I will, ideally be getting some numbers back as far as what, the electric portion would do to rates so that that can be digested. And I will share all this information with Bill Barthel and also try to arrange for when there could be a design presented at a high level.
Mrs. Radford, if I may also just add for councils, just remind council, okay, my understanding is Delmarva is going to begin their work probably, I would guess, within the next 3 to 5 weeks. Okay, the last conversation I think Jeff and I had with them, or that we had with them a couple of weeks ago was, that, and then I think I shared that with council last month. So when you're looking at phase 1 of this thing, again, just to remind everybody, phase 1 is just pretty much right around the corner. So if Pam can get me those numbers, obviously, we'll take a look at that and we'll bring it back to council as quickly as possible. But just so you guys are all aware.
Well, so obviously there's something we're going to have to make decisions about in the next month or two. I mean,
absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So there's a critical component, and it may be something that this next council wants to address very soon.
Right.
As opposed to waiting to mid-May. So,
correct.
But thanks for all that. That's very helpful just to get to hear kind of what needs to be done. If there aren't any other questions on underground, I think the next topic we wanted to talk about was electric vehicle charging while we have Ms. Fatone here.
Sure. Would you like me to summarize where we're at?
Yes.
Okay. So the Planning Commission and HAC participated in a couple meetings with the city and the MSC, and I apologize for that. And we received recently, Mr. Lafferty had provided a summary of, and maybe I guess it's not Mr. Baldini here, but as I understood it, Mr. Lafferty from the Planning Commission had identified that the charger that currently is owned and is ready to be installed could be installed at the 3rd Street parking lot. Permission was granted by the trustees for installation of at least that one dual head public charging station, which would take up 2 parking spots. And there were 2 other locations, 2 parking areas that were also suggested to be the next EV chargers that would be installed. One location was the library parking lot, and the other location was 2nd and Chestnut Street parking area. Oh, I'm sorry, Valerie, do you have a presentation? Should I?
No.
Okay. No. I just saw it on the screen as I was talking.
No.
And so just to remind everybody that DNREC has a rebate available. And so the option is to be able to purchase some additional charging stations so that we can install them throughout the community and be utilized. So after I received the information regarding the library parking lot and the 2nd and Chestnut Street parking area, I have asked the electric department to develop an estimate on the cost to get electric to that area. Because although 90% of the charging station is covered by the DNREC rebate, and then 10% of the charging station is covered for by green energy funds, the installation, the conduit, the electric wire, of course, is still borne by the MSC. So I'm in the process of accumulating the cost associated with electrifying those 2 areas if it's decided that those are the ones that are determined. And we do need to make a purchase of the additional charging stations, ideally by the beginning of May, latest probably the end of May. We need to receive them and have invoicing by the end of June in order to get the the rebates. So that's all I really had to report, other than at this point, we had identified, the MSC had been committed to paying for the electric and the maintenance of these, at least the one that was purchased, for at least a year to understand and gather information about the usage. So on April 22nd, this is on the commission's agenda to review the additional purchases that may be requested by the council and or the commission, and basically make a recommendation to purchase additional ones, because there have been an interest, and to support the, those maintenance wise and electric for at least a year. And during that year, rates design can be developed, and you also gather information as to who's using it. There are additional charges that we would incur if we start charging immediately, meaning that, the payment charges and things of that nature. So we would avoid those charges while we're gathering information about the usage. So that was the thought process up to now. So that's really all I had.
This is Councilman Smith, and you've been talking to Hack about locations, I understand.
That is correct. Laura Fontana is also part of HAC, I believe, as well as Justin Day had been participating. And I know there was a desire to address, individuals having their own chargers at their homes and the challenges that has within the community. And that if there were public charging areas for residents to charge their vehicles, that would help to minimize some of the concerns about, chargers at each individual's homes and wires running across sidewalks.
Hey, Council President Ratchford, I'd like to see if we could allow Mrs. Fontana, or Ms. Fontana, excuse me, to speak as the head of HAC.
Certainly.
Okay, hold on one moment.
Ms. Fontana, are you there?
Yes, hi. Good evening. Thank you
Good
for
evening.
allowing me to speak just for a few minutes. So everyone is really working hard on this project, and I have to say it's nice to see, council and the Planning Commission, MSC, and HAC working together. So just a few comments about the 3rd Street parking lot. So I did send out an email today to several individuals after my discussion with Scott, and I believe I had CC'd Ms. Patone on it as well, in regards to the specific location of that charging station. So there's 3 conduits on the left-hand side. We're asking it to be installed in the furthest one from the street that would fulfill parking spots 5 and 6. And HAC is kind of doing this as a mock trial, just to to see it in place and get the feel for it in place from the SEMA Connect one that we saw pictures of. And that area, I'm very thankful you put it on the left-hand side of the parking lot and not the right-hand side of the parking lot. That one has a little bit more protection from additional landscaping. So we did just want to, we appreciate everyone's efforts. We look forward to seeing it installed, and then just to see kind of what it looks like when everything's kind of in bloom around it. So, we can just see, is there anything else we're going to need to do as far as any screening? We're hoping not, but we just wanted to make it clear we're asking it to be installed in the 3rd conduit. And then as far as the other locations, before things get wired, HAC now has the list of these additional locations. So I think we'll be able to play a little bit more of a proactive role in just looking at those areas, and maybe giving some insight as to locations within those areas as well. So we look forward to continuing to work with everybody. So thanks for the time.
And thank you to HAC, and I know specifically you as leader, and then also Justin Day. And John Lafferty on Planning Commission. So at this point, I guess there's more work to be done, but the plans are to get a bunch of the public ones out in multiple locations around the city so that residents and visitors can take advantage of them.
I just have a quick question, and this may have been covered in the last couple months, but the cost of the chargers versus the cost of the rebates, what's the net amount? What's the net cost to the city?
Chargers are approximately $7,000. This is just rounded numbers.
Correct.
90% covered by the state, DNREC, 10% covered by the Municipal Services Green Energy Fund. And then it's just the installation and the networking that would be charged, that would have to be absorbed by the MSC. And so the networking is about, I apologize, I don't have the number in front of me, but I think it's about $400 a month, or excuse me, a year for each dual system. And then the installation was fairly reasonable for 3rd Street because the excavation was done and it was really just conduit at this point. So I don't have that number yet, Councilman Leary. So I have to get that information on installation and the wiring.
Okay. Do we want to recommend now or wait till May? Although she did say there was some urgency as to how many of these we wanted to purchase.
Mr. Barthel, you and I had a conversation about that. You want to summarize?
I'm sorry, could you ask that question again, please?
I think there's been some discussion about that. I think Ms. Fatone and Mr. Barthel discussed that we have to make a decision on them, but we don't have to install them or finalize.
Well, okay, I'm sorry, Madam President, I didn't hear the question. And yes, no, I'm sorry not to interrupt you. Okay, first of all, the document that's up on the screen right now was provided to us by John Lafferty, obviously from the Planning Commission. And John and Justin Day have really done a great job in communicating this, you know, primarily to MSC, but then bringing us in as well. We've had meetings with those folks, with the trustees. So all of these things have been happening and behind this, well, I won't say behind the scenes, but have been happening for some time now. So what we did was Mrs. Rackford and I had a conversation with Mr. Lafferty, and this was basically the summation of tentative locations that the Planning Commission has identified for future places to put the chargers. So that being said, in looking at this, Pam and I had talked about it and said, okay, my understanding is the agreement with the grant is that if we've identified, which we have, tentative locations, we can take advantage of ordering those chargers now with the rebate and with the cost associated with them that Pam described. So we're trying to take advantage of these particular, at least, again, they're tentative, but we have something in that we can say, look, these are the things we're looking at. We want to go ahead and take advantage of the rebates and what have you before the end of June. Now, my understanding there is that the next step for this is that it goes to the commissioners, and Pam, correct me if I'm wrong, it goes to the commissioners. And if at that time everybody agrees that this is all, you know, the direction that you want to go, then we would go ahead and order these additional chargers.
That is correct. It is on the agenda for April 22nd. And I'll share all this information with commissioners at that time and make a recommendation. But I think that, you know, to buy the maximum, which is kind of what we believe the maximum would be, there's you know, that we can do under this rebate. With the understanding that, you know, the locations will be approved and that, you know, I'll also have any kind of installation costs, which we're hoping, because we have the labor to do it, won't be too much. So, yeah, that is the next step, Bill.
Madam President.
Yes, go ahead, Mayor.
Thank you very much. I would really encourage, let me thank everybody that's been providing some thought on this. I think the challenge for us, though, is the following. We don't necessarily have a plan, and I think we have to have a plan. We have a lot of tactics that have been suggested, but we don't have a strategy. And so I would encourage, I don't think we have to reinvent the wheel. Annapolis, City of Alexandria, a number of other historic places have already wrestled through some of these problems and challenges. We have a number of neighborhoods outside the historic area that have similar limitations to off-street parking. Shawtown in particular, parts of Dobbinsville, of course, most of Dobbinsville. And you have other neighborhoods as well. So I would encourage us to use some of the resources that we have. We've got a planner that's part of a large firm, could probably pull some information from other colleagues off the shelf. We need a strategy. We're about to tear up a bunch of streets. We don't have to put necessarily machines around anywhere, but we might be able to put perhaps scattered about the city places where people can use the cord, use the plug, the device that's given to them at the time of purchase, and charge their car there. We also have to recognize that, you know, we've got a number of different users. You have people who are going to come in for employment purposes. You're also going to have people who are going to come in to visit. You're going to also have a lot of residents that are going to have needs, most of whom, as I said, don't have off-street parking options. And of course, you know, our own community is not going to be the only place that they're going to find availability. But I do think there are options that we need to be thinking about. There are other cities and municipalities that have gone before us. So I would encourage us to ask Ms. Hammerun and Mr. Rogers to very quickly do some searching within their own firms, what they've recommended in other places that have similar challenges, and just kind of curate all that and provide some suggestions, because I think we need a larger strategy. What we've got right now is helpful. They're tactical steps, but there's not a strategy. And there's a lot of other policy choices that I think this group is going to have to take a look at relative to the prices charged overnight. Can somebody from out of town just pull up, park overnight in one of the parking lots and just take full advantage of being plugged in for a good part of the night? What about residents? Similarly, will there be late fees and idle fees, which is typical? So I think there's a lot here that doesn't meet the eye. I've lived this life since May of last year. So I would encourage us to kind of think a bit more broadly and strategically about that and engage some of these other people, because they have firms that have been down this already.
Mayor, may
I
I
was
ask?
I was in the first meeting and where HAC and MSC and the Planning Commission sat down, and all those questions seemed to come up, and a lot of them were answered. I think where we're just trying to get right now is how many of these chargers can we get in a short amount of time? You know, as far as that list looked like a pretty good first cut, but Pam had somebody there in the meeting I was in from what is it, Pam? DEC?
DMEC.
DMEC.
Yes.
And she was in there, and she had done a lot of research, and she was answering a lot of these questions. How long do you park? Who are we serving? Who are the consumers where? So those discussions have been going on, Mike, and I think we're probably just working our way to a decision on what's the first wave of these things and where might they go. This is not a forever kind of thing we're going through right now. I think we're under the gun to get somewhere, to get a bargain, to get these things in place. So it's not like those questions haven't been discussed already. It's not like those folks don't know that.
Yeah, I don't think, again, I would point to the fact that I think we've got some tactics here. I don't think we have a strategy. And I think we could find out, we're about to tear up a bunch of streets, and I think we could figure out ways in which to provide very unobtrusive services to folks curbside. There's just other ways to think outside the box here without having to buy machines. So there's certainly a lot more to talk about here, but thank you.
Right. Thanks, Jim. But I guess the question tonight is going to be is, do we take advantage of the grant and order as many as we can, and then figure out where we're going to put them down the road? Because eventually they're going to, you know, we're going to put them in no sooner or later. So we might as well take advantage of the 90% grant.
I think the intent already per Bill and Pam and them, as long as MSC goes along with it, is they're going to buy as much, or the ones that are on the list. But I do see what Mayor Quaranta is saying about strategy and who, where, what, when, and how. unrelated to the actual installation. They're in, but what's the strategy once they're in? And Councilperson Smith, those things may have been discussed in those meetings, as I wasn't able to attend, but we just haven't heard what those strategies are.
There were no strategies. I'm just saying those issues have been surfaced. And the issue now is not how to, is we're under a deadline to take advantage of a bargain. And that sheet of paper doesn't necessarily mean where all these things are going to go or need to go. That is still to come. The strategy is still to come. I don't think we need the strategy to get the pieces that will be involved in the strategy. And again, it is who's the consumer, where is it, visitors, is it people on the street? That's a good question, but this is just a first take at this thing while we have an opportunity to get a bargain.
Yeah, I think strategy, as Mayor Kronta said, is I think he's also referring to, with the streets being torn up, what is it, Boston, who has underground. Sorry about the underground comes up again, but a plug basically in the sidewalk. So you don't even have to have one of the machines. I see where he's going, but yes, at the moment, we just need to move forward on the other one. So thank you, Pam. We appreciate the information that you got.
This is Suzanne Souter. I just have a question. I thought I understood Ms. Patone to say that in order to get these chargers through this grant, we can't just say, oh, we'll take 10. We have to have specific locations identified to put them. And they've identified 2 additional locations, the library parking lot and the 2nd and Chestnut Street lot. And so those are the only 2 we would be in a position to order now. Is that correct?
So that's a good question. And we did clarify with DENREC that we did not need to have them definitive with the locations, but there are restrictions on the, so in other words, there can be up to 6 at a certain location. That would be 3 duals or 6 individuals. So, we know that we have limitations on how many we can place at one location. So let's just say, the 2 that are identified other than the 3rd Street, that could be 6 right there. We have 1 that we already own that's going in 3rd Street. If the decision was to add 2 more duals at the 3rd Street, that would be, the 6 plus the 2 is 8. Excuse me. So, we could purchase up to that amount, but you've also have a EV vehicle. So I guess I was anticipating another conversation with Bill to understand, how many he was anticipating the recommendation to be. But yes, I was anticipating approximately purchasing another 8. But the commissioners are going to be interested to hear how council feels about this. So because this is not something that we're just taking on lightly, and we understand that it is council's decision on where they're located. So I appreciate the conversation, and that's why I would be looking for direction from Bill and from council to kind of advise and recommend to the commissioners.
This is Council President Ratcher. It sounds to me there's a lot of interest and support in moving on this. It's what's going to happen in the future, and there are a lot of pieces. I would suggest that Ms. Patone and Ms. Rethel, figure out the next steps. We have several other items on the agenda we need to move on, but I think this was a really good discussion, and thank all the people that have been working on it. Okay.
Thank you.
And thank you, Ms. Patone, and thank you for your service to the city. And we wish you, you've really done a lot for the citizens, and we will miss you. So we appreciate
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Take care.
Okay,
Thanks,
thank
Brandon.
you. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next agenda, which is a motion, discussion, and vote on Resolution 2021-14. It's a resolution confirming the mayor's appointment to the Board of Health. Do I have a motion to consider?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Second, and then I'm going to read the resolution. We'll have a discussion. It's Resolution 2021-14. It's a resolution confirming the mayor's appointment of Jackie Metz to the Board of Health. Whereas Section 193-3 of the Newcastle City Code provides that the mayor of Newcastle shall appoint 5 members to the Board of Health subject to confirmation by City Council. And whereas there is currently 1 vacant position eligible for appointment to the Board of Health, and whereas the mayor has elected to reappoint Jackie Metz to a 1-year term to the Board of Health, and whereas the City Council desire to confirm the mayor's reappointment of Jackie Metz to the Board of Health for a 1-year term ending on April 9, 2022. Now therefore be it resolved that the City Council hereby confirms the appointment of the following person to the Board of Health, Jackie Metz, 1-year term ending April 9, 2022. Is Ms. Metz here this evening? I don't believe so. I don't know if she.
Madam President, she's unavoidably absent.
Would you like to say anything else, Mayor?
No, I mean, she's, as I said, I think in my opening remarks, she's been a school nurse, a good contributor on the board in the past, and I think we'd be grateful for her continued service. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. I agree with you. So at this point, any other comments from council?
I just think Jackie Metz is a terrific person. I think she'll serve the city well soon.
Okay, there are no other comments, and I'm going to ask for a vote on Resolution 2021-14. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, well, Jackie Metz has been officially nominated to the Board of Health, and we look forward to having her serve. Okay, next item on the agenda is to approve the submission of proposal to the Delaware Public Archives for a historical marker relating to the slavery in Newcastle, and it's from Councilperson Smith. I'm going to ask him to lead this conversation.
Okay, Ann Yarborough approached me a while back asking about the possibility of council supporting an effort to have a state historical marker erected in Newcastle, which would document early slavery in Newcastle and in Delaware, specifically the shipment of 72 slaves here to Newcastle, who were subsequently captured by the British. And it seemed like helping fill in a piece of history that we don't really talk about. And just to tell you a little bit of a story, I know it's late, but at one point I was the chief of interpretation for the Mid-Atlantic region of the National Park Service and had an office in Independence National Historical Park. And I found out that my secretary had never visited Independence National Historical Park. So I decided one day to take her out there, and I took her all through the park and probably 10 of the 19 sites, and including 2 historic houses. And we came back into the office and sat down, and she looked at me and said, and she happened to be Black, and she said to me, "Where was I?" I did not have a good answer for her. Where were the Black residents? And that really struck a chord with me. And during my time as chief of interpretation, I tried very hard to get the untold stories told throughout the 70-some parks in the region. So Ann is here herself, and we'll unmute her and let her tell the story of her idea. Kim? Need a little unmuting help.
Okay, I'm asking her to unmute, but I can't unmute her unless she does it. There you go.
Oh, there you go.
Okay. Okay, thanks. Thanks, Russ. And thanks for letting me talk for a minute or two. I know it is late. When we first moved, my husband, Greg Brown, who's the cook on the Kelmer-Nickel. That's why we came to Old Newcastle. When we first moved to Old Newcastle in early 2016, I'm kind of a history nerd, and so I wanted to read, as much history as I could. And I came across a little book by Bruce DeLeo that was published by the Newcastle Historical Society and based on an exhibit that had been done in the old library in 2002 called African Americans Passing on the Story, African American Experience in Newcastle. And in this little book, it talks about these 74 Africans who were brought by the Dutch West India Company to New Amstel, then a colony of the town of Amsterdam. And they were brought right at the very moment that the Duke of York took over New Amstel and it became Newcastle. So at that very moment was the time when they were here. They were only here for a few weeks. They had been brought from Africa through the Middle Passage and up through the Caribbean and into New Amsterdam, New York City, and then met there by Peter Ulrich, who was then a town councilor. And then they were brought overland from New York City to New Amstel. And they were probably here for a few weeks. And because the Duke of York then invaded Old Newcastle, which all of you know, they were sold off very quickly to people from Maryland who came across into Delaware, who were desperate for workers for this new cash crop, tobacco. This was very early, very early. It was 1664, so it was very early in the tobacco industry as well. And so I think my sense is that this is a time in the history of Newcastle that's less well known by people than, say, the moment that William Penn stepped onto the shore, 1682. Everybody knows that. And once it became an English colony and then moved into the time before the Revolution and the time of separation and then the Revolution, our history becomes better and better known. But if you go back to this 17th century period, I think we need a little bit more of that history. And this is a particular thread, the thread of these 72 Africans who came through the town, that can really enhance the fabric of the town's history as we present it to the world. So that was what my thinking was. And again, I thank you for letting me come and talk to you about it.
Thank you, Ann. Does anybody have any questions?
This isn't an approval, this isn't an ordinance or resolution, so it's just a general approval to submit to the
This is
state.
right now, this is just a discussion. And I had put together a resolution which would give our backing, the city's backing to this request, to Ann's request. It's not a request from the city. And the resolution would state that the city would have control of the placement and the wording of the marker.
Okay, I'm for it.
Well, shouldn't we know what's going to be on the marker first? I mean, we're for something that it's a blank page. I mean, we just recognized the Harriet Tubman Trail. Signs are up all over town. We put one down in Dobbinsville. I just don't want to commit to something that I don't know what it's going to say.
But didn't I just say that council would have approval of the wording of the plaque?
You did.
I would like to see the plaque before I see it.
And that would be in the resolution. Okay.
If I could just speak to that process question a little bit. The Delaware Public Archives has only, as of March 1st, requires that any town in which a historical marker is being proposed, that any town write a letter or pass a resolution supporting that. But this all goes to the archivists at the Delaware Public Archives. I mean, I have done some preliminary work, but it would be the historians and the researchers there who follow up. And there's a real, as you know, a real art to creating these historical markers. They put a lot into a very few words. And I'm sure that as Councilman Smith says, you all would be able to review that, but it becomes basically something on the level of the state archivist. So I think we wouldn't need to worry so much about it being done right. But again, I think the town would certainly have review rights for that. Yeah.
Right.
Well, I
worked
would
on
like
the-
it done right. You said we don't have to worry about it being done right. I think it should be done right.
Exactly. It would be.
I worked
Because
on a
it's
marker-
yeah,
I worked on a marker with archives down at Collins Park.
they're very good.
We were back and forth on the wording. In that case, I didn't have final say. They did, because it was their marker and it was going on state land. Here, if we stipulate it's not going in Newcastle unless we approve the wording, we have final control.
Right.
As my understanding, this is Council President Radford. It would be something like it's a marker like on Packet Alley.
Yeah.
Green. And so we're not asking the city for funding. We're basically looking for a motion and approval from council for archives to start the work. But then it would come back to us in the form of a resolution where we would then vote on the content and the placement. I think that was.
Okay.
That is true.
Right.
Mr. Losco, I think that was, Mr. Losco did look at it and said we did not need a resolution at this point.
No.
Madam President, I did look at it. It was subject to approval of location and content. So. Yeah.
Right.
Okay, fair enough.
So if we just did a motion, if Mr. Smith wants to make a motion, and we certainly appreciate your work, Mr. Harper, because it's, it's a lot of work to come to this point even. So thank you for bringing it to our attention. So if you want to do a motion, then we can vote on it and then we can go back to the archives and say that the city supports.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Is that correct?
Okay.
That would be great.
Okay.
I'd like to move that the city support Ms. Yarborough's proposal to the archives to place a historical marker regarding slavery in Newcastle, subject to conditions, subject to approval of final location and wording.
I second.
I have a second for Ms. Leary. So at this point, I'm going to ask for a vote on council on the motion on the floor. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Nay. Those opposed? So unanimously, we have a motion to proceed with this and we look forward to hearing more. So
Thank you.
very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Council President Ratchford,
Yes.
I ask that we just move the discussion regarding the pavement striping to our next meeting since it's late. The natural gas meters have a more urgent need to them.
Okay, if you would like to make a motion to table that to the next meeting?
Yes, I make a motion to table our council discussion regarding the pavement striping of parking spaces on 3rd Street to our next meeting.
Okay, do you have a second?
Yeah.
Have a second? I'm sorry, do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Platt. Okay. Okay, all those in favor of postponing the discussion on pavement striping to the next meeting indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed. Okay, that one has been tabled. And at this point, I'll turn the next discussion over to Mr. Smith regarding natural gas meters. And I also think Mr. Barthel has some contributions on this one. So Mr. Smith?
Okay, I'm going to try to go to share screen. Okay. Share screen. Okay. Application you are sharing. Tabs. I'm not sure. Okay.
There you go. It shows.
I know, but I'm not sure I'm in order. I'm trying to get So trying to get a PowerPoint to come up.
If you stop that share and then just try to start the other one with the PowerPoint, it'll work better.
Okay, share screen. Oh, there's the PowerPoint. Didn't see it. Okay, just to kind of define the problem, here you see the Cleveland Museum next to Jessup's with its new gas meter, and across the street there is Clouds Row. This is a photograph taken in 1936 for the Historic American Building Survey. And Clouds Row, of course, is part of the National Historic Landmark District and part of the Historic District. And this is what Clouds Row looks like today. If you look down in this corner here, you can see a gas regulator. And of course, that's what that looks like, just to familiarize us with that. And then if you look down the road, there are gas meters and pretty much a blot on the historic scene. I think what we had was Delmarva maybe not understanding what the law was concerning historic districts. And I don't think anybody was doing anything purposely. They assumed that they could ask any resident whether you wanted to have gas meter inside or outside, and then they could do whatever the resident said. And apparently that's what they did here, and they did in a number of different areas on Delaware Street. Thing is, they don't have that option, and residents don't have that option according to the Delaware Code. And that's what this is here. It gets pretty complex as opposed to the House bill this came from. The public utility may relocate the gas meter outside with the property owner's approval where a property is located in historic district, neighborhood conservation district, or other designated districts subject to design guidelines or guidelines involving review and approval by applicable board or agency, or is eligible for listing on the National Register of Historic Places. Basically, what it's saying is if it's a historic area or eligible for the National Register, that Delmarva has to consult the historic district, the agency that's responsible for the historic district. As far as being listed on the National Register, the National Landmark District is a step above the National Register. National Register includes houses or buildings, structures on the of local importance, regional importance, or national importance. National landmarks are only of national importance. The public utility shall relocate the other gas equipment for the property, such as the regulator and valve, accessories there to outside. If the gas meter and other equipment are moved outside, here's a good one here. The public utility shall provide initial landscaping or other screening to provide the gas meter and other gas equipment. I didn't see that done on any of the properties that I looked at. So it's Delmarva's responsibility to do that. Now, in this case, since the Delmarva did not consult with HAC, they would be required by law to take the meters out that are already there. They did that illegally. And then here you've got our HAC guidelines. The installation of any equipment on the front yard or street elevation is not appropriate. Equipment should be located in the rear yard to minimize visibility from the public right of way. Where it is demonstrated that locating equipment or piping vents and accessories in the rear yard or the rear elevation is not possible, equipment and accessories may be located on the side at least 20 feet back from the front elevation. Any equipment must be screened with appropriate fencing or landscape shrubbery. Any equipment visible from the public right of way should be screened with appropriate fencing or landscape shrubbery. So there's some question, does HAC have authority over this? Well, yes, the state has given HAC authority. Now, there are some things that are a bit complex. That regulator needs to be closer to the street than within 20 feet. But the problem we have is that meters have been located outside the law, and there was proposal to do more so on the Strand as they move down the Strand. And they would be asking property owners like Linda, do you want your meter outside or inside? And Linda doesn't have the authority to say outside. She does not have that authority. We have a historic district with rules, and that means individuals have delegated that authority to the city, or the city has that authority. So that's where we are, folks. We need to, at the very least, get Delmarva to stop doing what they're doing and make them aware of the law.
Mr. Smith, I'm confused. I seem to remember when we were discussing the Delaware Street project, we were told that Delmarva had met with HAC about the placement at these meters.
That is not true. Ask Layla, ask Laura. They did not. They did not get approval. If they said something to them, they did not get the required approval. There's nothing on file anywhere that says that they could do that.
This is Council President Rasher. I think Mr. Barthel's had some conversations with Delmarva. And I know Mr. Bergstrom was working with Ms. Hamrim, so maybe they could also give us some background and what, some plans are of Delmarva to improve the situation.
Well, let me just say this in regard to, it was the opinion of Layla and of Jeff at the time that a tier 1 approval was appropriate for these to be placed in front of the properties. Now, Delmarva was told that they had to get written permission from the various, they were supposed to have filled out the appropriate paperwork to get that tier 1 approval, which I will tell you that never happened. But from our understanding and from, again, from what we thought, or from what Jeff thought and what Layla thought, was that a tier 1 was appropriate. That did not happen. They did not fill out the necessary documentation. That's number one. Now, if that wasn't the case, that's fine.
I think tier 1 is basically replacement in kind. Somebody has a fence.
Okay, well, let me, if I may. Okay, I'm just telling you, I'm just laying out, if I may. I'm just saying this was what they thought was appropriate at the time.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
If it was not correct, then it wasn't correct.
Laura, are you still here? Laura?
Yep, sorry. Yes, coming. Yeah, I'm here.
What's your view?
So I did ask Layla about this because I knew that this discussion was coming up. And I guess two things were, yes, she had indicated that it needed to be a case-by-case basis. So for each homeowner, it had to come forth for approval. It was not going to be a blanket approval. It was going to be a case-by-case approval. So on their case-by-case approval, I can't specifically say if it was going to stay a tier 1 or if they would move it forward to be in front of the commissioners. But the one thing Layla did say was that it was definitely a case-by-case approval process for each homeowner. So Delmarva was supposed to come for each case, as Mr. Barthel said.
Well, Laura.
Right, and that's what we did. And may I finish,
Laura,
please? And that's what I said. We sent them the documentation. In fact, Layla had said, this is the information that each homeowner had to complete. And I can, and I can tell you that didn't happen.
Okay, whatever the case was there, Layla didn't have authority to approve meters in front of houses. That's contrary to the state law.
Okay, so now let me I will just continue to lay out how I understand the HB 362. And there is disagreement with that, Mr. Smith, and I'll default to Mr. Losco on this. We've had numerous discussions about this, about exactly the thing that you're pretty certain about. I don't know that the lawyers are as certain about it. But let me just take this up. Let me also fill you in with this. I mean, Delmarva had spoken to their lawyers and they believe that, and I'll just read it to you. They see the project and the interpretation of HB 362 in relation to the city guidelines as being a two-step process. Under the statute, the company believes the decision for the meter location rests with the customer and the company. And if the customer would like the meter outside of the location or the location of the meter is impacted by elements of HB 362, preventing access or a safety issue, we would then refer to the city's guidelines for landscaping and screening. Now, I'll again let Mr. Losco, he may disagree with that, and that's fine. The point I'm going to make in all of this is, well, let me also say this. Delmarva has gone back and there's 9 meters that are out in front of people's homes. They've contacted or have reached out to all 9 of those people. 5 of them are okay to move the meters back in. 3 of them they are still trying to connect with, and 1 they're not sure of. But their thought on that is, okay, if they get the okay to go in and see those 5 meters to put them inside, they are then going to go back and revisit the location, which they're going to go, let's say they get approval to go back and look at all 9 of them. And they're going to say, okay, now Delmarva says they'll revisit the gas meters and make consideration to a meter back inside the premise based on the following safety conditions and customer conversations. The meter shall not be concealed by plaster, sheathing, or any other material. The meter must be in a ventilated area, not less than 3 feet away from any source of ignition or any sources of heat, and provide adequate access for maintenance and replacement. And the customer confirms the relocation of the meter back inside the premise. If the customer declines, then we will provide the information back to the city of Newcastle. So, and I'll just jump ahead and finish my thought, and then Dan can get in and contradict me if he'd like. But the thought on this whole thing was that if you have a customer, Delmarva thinks that if a customer says we don't want it outside, they will come back to us. And if you have an ordinance, if you write it, a resolution is not going to cut it. But if you write an ordinance that says we want it outside, we don't care what you think, these are our guidelines, then, and a customer says, no, I want it outside, then the city would take the customer to court. And at which time a court would then decide, are Delmarva's lawyers correct or are our lawyers correct? If in fact our lawyer agrees with their lawyers. That's kind of where we're at.
Mr. Losco?
Thank you, folks. This is Dan Losco. I do think that this language in HB 362 is kind of confusing.
If I may,
the first clause.
Dan,
yes.
That's the House bill. I did find the Delaware code. That's what I quoted in the PowerPoint.
Well, it's the same language. When you look at when you look at the first clause, it says notwithstanding any provision of the Delaware code, any law, ordinance, or regulation of the municipality to the contrary, the utility may relocate the gas meter outside with the owner's approval where the property is located in a historic district, subject to design standards and guidelines. So the things I'm hearing and what I understand to be the case is that the application to apply for HAC to address those design standards and guidelines were given to Delmarva, but they never filled them out and submitted it, so that HAC never got the chance to look at it. But I also understand that Layla's viewpoint about this being a tier 1 review relates greatly to the fact that these are row house, or many of these are row houses where there is no side yard where you can put the meter on, and that it's an essential utility. Some of these houses are heated by gas. You can't just prohibit them from having gas. The other point that has to be remembered is that these regulators apparently can't go inside because of the high pressure nature of them, and that some homes don't have adequate space to locate these meters in. So there's a lot of different factors here. But I think the good news is that Delmarva recognizes that they didn't follow the appropriate hack protocol, and that they seem perfectly willing to go back to owners and talk to them about relocating meters inside where it's possible and where the owner will consent to it. And in those cases where they won't, I don't think there's any intention on the part of Delmarva not to do the landscaping. And that is part of the law, that where the owner requests landscaping, they will do the camouflaging and the screening. Now the owner has to maintain that. They're only doing the initial landscaping screening. But I think that in those cases where there's no other place to put it, where the owner is refusing it, I think it's really going to come down to camouflaging them with landscaping on the one hand, or as Mr. Barthel says, let's go to court and let a judge decide whether or not these meters can be forced inside if the interior can accommodate the meter itself.
Mr. Losco, can you read just the very first line again, what you read?
You put it back up on the screen?
Yeah, maybe it's better to put it back on the screen. Yeah.
No, is that what you read? Not
I'm
what,
reading from HB 362.
Is that
Mr.
what was
Smith
on the-
thinks there may be some distinct,
No,
different
what I-
language. So let's put it up on the screen.
Language is quite a bit different in the Delaware Code.
Okay.
but what,
Yeah, the two things we're talking about are regulators and meters. Everybody pretty much has a meter inside already. So as far as not having room inside, that's a non-issue. And then the regulators, maybe they have to go outside, and in the best case, they'll go around the corner. They don't have to be on the front. They can, if you have a side of the house, you can put it on the side of the house.
But they're row homes, you can't.
Oh, well,
The
they're always
pictures you
the end of-
showed me, they were all row homes there. I couldn't.
No, they're all always the end of a row, Mike.
the
like
regulator?
Put all 5 meters there?
Pardon me?
Put all 5 meters there then?
No, just when you can. When you can put it on the side, put it on the side. If you can't put it on the side, you can put it in the front. You know, that's not being unreasonable.
There's a difference between the regulators and the meters.
Regulating, right.
The regulator was that
I know.
relatively small thing in the photo he showed us. The meters were significantly larger.
And both on the side of my house. I know what they are.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying.
So the
Right.
issue is the meter, which everyone had, well, those of us who have gas and everything else, we already have one in the house. So the meter can go in the house as long as it doesn't, all these things that Mr. Losco mentioned about placement and stuff, or Mr.
Needs
Barthel.
code.
So the meters can go in the house. Regulators, it is that high pressure gas line. Those maybe, I don't believe those can go in the house, but they can be around the corner, or if they have to be in front, they have to be in front. But the meters most certainly can go inside.
You can even paint the regulators, but they do have to be outside. And the best case is to put them on the side of the house if you have a side of the house.
So I guess from what I heard, from Mr. Barthel and Mr. Losco, this goes to court.
No, not necessarily. That's where you're taking it. However, Mr. Barthel clearly stated that Delmarva is contacting folks. 5 people have said, yes, we're going to move it back in. There was 9, right, Bill? And 3 they haven't been able to contact with, and 1 is still thinking about it. Okay, so Delmarva is willing to move these back inside. Okay, and the rules that we have right now with HAC and the fact that they didn't do the tier 1, they just need to be inside according to our own HAC provisions. And I think we need to be careful going forward that this gets done correctly by Delmarva, because it is going to be others going in, and that it's not a tier 1.
Apparently Delmarva now realizes that they screwed up, and they're trying to make it right.
Yeah,
And so we have to worry about going forward.
Right.
That's where we are. And it's not, not to find fault or anything else, but they didn't read the law. And it's right there.
so going
And-
forward, Mr. Barthel,
And HAC has to carry out its responsibilities.
so Mr. Barthel, do you think that going forward, now that Delmarva is aware of this, that HAC will obviously be involved, but I don't believe it should be a tier one. Tier one is kind of replacement in kind. Replacement in kind is you're replacing the one in the house that's already in there. So is there a way that we can make sure it's not a tier one?
Well, again, in my,
Heck.
well, in my statement, I think, and again, Dan, chime in, because again, God knows you and I have had numerous conversations about this. Perhaps council, if, perhaps you take it out of their hands and you just put together an ordinance that says, okay, this is what we want. And as I said, so then you've got something, and then if, we want these outside under any circumstance, and then if a homeowner says, well, under any circumstance, and I don't know how you're going to deal with Delmarva if they say there's plaster, there's this, we don't, whatever that case may be. Like I said, to Mrs. Leary's point, Delmarva is willing to put them wherever, wherever the city really wants them to be put. But I guess where you might run into an issue would be, so let's say you pass an ordinance and you say, okay, these have to be out in front of the house, and we don't really
Inside.
care what other circumstances there are, or I'm sorry, inside. And then a homeowner says, well, no, I have the right to say this goes outside of my house for whatever reason, choose your reason. And at that point it would go, and even if it went to HAC and they made that decision, I think then, Dan, the homeowner would have the right, or the city would have the right at that point to take the homeowner to court and decide which is which.
We have the design guidelines. If somebody with a brick house decides they want to put aluminum siding on, they can take us to court. We've got
Understood, but you're
design
missing
guidelines.
you're missing my point, I think, in that the question here is there's an overriding, this overriding HB 362 is, the thought is that may trump what you're talking about. That's the difference, I think. And that's all I'm saying. I'm not, listen, I'm just giving you what I think the facts.
Right, it's HB 362 is stronger than our guidelines. And HB 362 is a bill. It's not a law. The Delaware Code is law. And that's what I put up on the screen.
So,
Dan, you want to, Dan, you want to?
Bill, Dan, is a bill a law?
No, a bill is a proposed law. I put up on my other screen the actual law. And to me, where I said earlier, I think this is not well worded. And it's subject to multiple interpretations. But that first clause in section D there says, notwithstanding any provision of any law of the municipality, they can put the meter outside with owner approval, and if it's in a historic district, it has to be subject to design standards and guidelines. I mean, that's how I'm reading it. So the question, one interpretation is that you can't prohibit it being outside, but you can adopt design standards and guidelines for the outdoor installation. That's just one interpretation, okay? Another interpretation might be that if your design standards and guidelines say it mustn't be indoors, it may not be outdoors. Now it seems to conflict with that very first clause. Notwithstanding any provision of the municipality, it can be outdoors. So you see my point? That is not a particularly well worded law if you can read it a couple of different ways. But
right,
I think we may be getting ahead of ourselves a little bit in the sense that Delmarva is willing to go back to these owners and see how many, and they've already got a significant portion of them happy to relocate these indoors. And you're still going to have to do some landscaping around regulators, especially with respect to those row houses that don't have side yards. So yeah, I think this is something that we ought to revisit once we really know how many can be moved indoors and how many cannot. And the point about meters being indoors, I was looking at my own gas meter at my house. It's a heck of a lot smaller than that meter that you're seeing out there on Delaware Street there. And I don't know if the high pressure line prompts them to use some kind of a larger meter. I just don't know the answer to that. So it may be that it does require greater space indoors. I don't know the answer to that. I'm just speculating.
Okay,
So can I get just clarification? We're talking about 3 houses right now that haven't committed to putting them indoors.
I think it's 4. right?
Okay, so
Four
we're
Three
other
that
houses.
have not,
And
there's 3
Delmarva's-
that they're still trying to contact, and one who they've contacted who's just probably gonna do it, but has some questions. is
Okay.
What I was told.
I mean, it seems like the problem solving itself.
And perhaps the city can do some lobbying with those 4 owners that either haven't been contacted or are on the fence. And see if we can work with them to get it indoors too.
well,
And that's kind of what Delmarva is also saying. You know what, if you've got these situations, we'll kick it back to you guys. And you
Right.
go out and, you know.
okay, because those owners don't have that choice. Unless it's impossible, like you said, Dan. But those owners don't have that choice.
But when it comes to codes and natural gases, you got to give that meter the respect that it deserves, or you lose the entire block.
Well, but we're not saying go against that. We're
Right.
saying if it can fit in there and go in there and there's no impedance to anything, yes, it can go in there.
I'm
If
in
there's an
agreement with
impedance, okay, that's been
That-
said like twice already. So
That's what the regulator's for. It's I think an on and off switch, and it has to be outside.
yes.
Mr. Smith, could I, Madam President, if you indulge me for 30 seconds?
Yeah, Mayor.
Only 30, Mike.
Mike, you never take 30
Yeah,
seconds.
You're on the clock, Mike. Wait a minute.
Okay, I just took half of it anyway. So it might be smarter to engage in a memorandum of understanding between the city and Delmarva and see if you can manage it around that way first. Accomplish, I think, what you're trying to get to, Russ.
Sure. You know, the easiest way we can do it.
And I think the key is we work on the ones that are out there, then the ones that are coming, that are the subsequent one, then it should be very clear, you know, regulator outside on the side if possible, meter inside.
Let the record show I took 10 seconds.
We owe you 20, Mike.
That's a
We owe you
miracle and
20.
you deserve an award. So I think we've kind of that's kind of resolved for the moment. They're working on them, moving forward, and we can probably have some sort of memorandum of understanding going forward with these others. Is that what I'm hearing?
Right.
Okay, all right. I'm satisfied with that.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Seconded.
All in favor, say aye.
Linda?
Goodbye, Linda.
Aye.
Aye.
Linda.
Linda.
See you around town. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
Night.
Linda.